right, let's jump down to college. Ryan, our Michigan State Spartans are hosting the Akron Zips. I don't know how they get this name, the Zips, but 3 o'clock Saturday on Big Ten Network. The Spartans are a 34.5-point favorite. Back-to-back MAC opponents to start the season for Michigan State, but that is basically where the comparisons end for Akron and Western Michigan. Western Michigan has the talent and the ability to compete for a conference championship. Yeah. Akron does not. Since the end of 2018, they've won a grand total of 4 football games. They were winless in 2019. They beat Bowling Green in 2020, Bowling Green and Bryant last season, and they opened up this year with a slim victory over FCS opponent St. Francis last weekend. They fired their former head coach last year who went 3-24. They brought in Joe Moorhead, and if his name sounds familiar, former head coach at Mississippi State, offensive coordinator at Oregon as well as Penn State. So he's been in the Big Ten. He knows about Michigan State. And this game, Ryan, will be the first meeting between these two schools since 1914. When Michigan State was Michigan Agricultural College, and they beat Akron 41-0 in 1913, and then beat them 75-6 in 1914, where George E. Carp Julian scored a school record 7 touchdowns in that win over Akron in 1914. So it's been a while since we've seen the Akron.
I was just talking about George E. the other day. It's crazy that you brought him up. Also, Joe Moorhead, shout out if you guys are real, true, loyal listeners to me and Matt. Joe Moorhead, great Sports Carnage inside joke. Do you remember that? They don't care. So Michigan State, 34.5 points favorites. They scored 35 points last game. So it seems like if you're going off that, they'd have to shut out Akron to cover the spread. But Michigan State, it sounded like Tucker wasn't happy with the performance last week. So I expect them to come out sharper, and I expect them to come out with a little more like oomph and flash and something to give the fans excited about. So I would expect more big plays. And like you said, Akron, one of the worst teams in the MAC. Western Michigan's not a good team compared to Michigan State, but they're a good team compared to the rest of the MAC teams that Michigan or Michigan State or whoever might play. Western should be a contender in that conference, and Akron is absolutely not going to be. So the spread makes sense to me. Jacoby Windman, again, my guess is they're going to dial up a lot of blitzes and a lot of pressure to honestly try and drum his stats up, because he had 4 sacks week 1. He was the Walter Camp Defensive Player of the Week. I think he was Big Ten Player of the Week too, defensively anyway. And I think it's always good for your school to be getting that kind of exposure, right? And I think Michigan State and Mel Tucker are well aware of that. So I think they're going to use this game to try and prop up Windman again and try to get him another 3 or 4 sacks. So that way, through the first 2 games, Jacoby Windman has 8 sacks, and everybody's like, oh my God, this guy's just a revelation, right? And people are talking about your program, which fares well for Michigan State if they're getting in the backfield a bunch. But, of course, it doesn't fare well for Akron. And I just expect Michigan State to be sharper. So the number does make sense to me. But I can also see a scenario, I guess granted they would still cover, where Michigan State wins 35-0, and people just kind of aren't too happy about it, right? I think people want that 50-point performance like Michigan had last week. I think they want Michigan State to go out and just drop a bomb on Akron. Western obviously didn't quite happen that way. But win a game 49-7 or 63-10 or something like that, just so you could, you look around college football and you see other big schools, other ranked teams beating up on their cupcakes like that. And then you had a quote-unquote close game with Western Michigan. And I think Michigan State is kind of cognizant of that, and I think that that's something that they will try to accomplish. And just week 2, they should clean up some of the stuff from week 1. We talked about it. 3 drives inside the 40, missed field goal, interception, and fumble. I doubt that happens. So I'll give Michigan State even just an extra 10 points if you're being generous, and they scored 45 last week, which is what I think people are obviously looking for instead of scoring 35, right? You want to score more points. That's the type of analysis you come to Griffin and Bass for.
Right. And backing up exactly what you said, Mel Tucker, was not happy, and he is challenging his players to raise their intensity level, and he doesn't want them sitting on, winning the game was not enough. Winning at 35-13, and now it looks like a good victory. It was 21-13 at the end of the third quarter. So don't give me 35-13 when it was a one-score game after 3. That's exactly what it was. And then, we make it look easier at the end as far as the score difference. Mel Tucker doesn't care about that. He wants it to be, look, it was 21-3. It should have been 42-10. It should have been 50 points, So, he's not happy, and he shouldn't be, because that was far from a perfect performance. And they are in the perfect position to show that. This team from Akron, they allowed St. Francis to throw for 265 yards last week. They allowed them to rack up 450-plus yards of offense. And they also allowed 6 sacks. So we're talking about our defense and what they bring to the table. And there's no reason to think that Michigan State shouldn't absolutely dominate this game from whistle to whistle. From beginning to end, there's no reason to think that Michigan State is not going to absolutely beat the ever-living crap out of the Akron Zips. So, with that said, because we both obviously think Michigan State is going to do just that, let's play a little bit of over-under here for you, Ryan. We've got to bounce back from last week. Our expectations were too high. They are just as high this week, though.
Do you
have, the Spartans should come through on these.
So,
over-under. I'll have to come back with that.
We can just start this week.
Afterwards for next week's
show.
We'll put it all together. But all right. Peyton Thorne, over under 275 yards passing.
I'll go under, because if they blow him out, they're going to throw in Noah Kim or Kateen Howers or Catton, whatever his name is.
I mean, he connects on 4 of those bomb touchdowns. That's 200 yards right there. And then he's just got a dink and dunk for another, 76. True. The secondary's terrible. I don't know how. There's no way that the Akron secondary is keeping up with Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman, Trey Mosley. No chance. There's no chance. So there's absolutely every opportunity for Peyton Thorne to air it out early and often. He should have 250 yards at halftime. And then you can take your foot off a little bit and then, run the ball after that the entire time. All right. 115 rushing yards for Berger.
I'll go over. I can see him breaking off a 50-yard run and then just getting, 5 or 6 yards of carry outside of that. I'll go over 115.
Yep. I'm with you. I'm going over as well. 70 yards for Broussard.
I think Broussard's a little bit better than Berger, and I think eventually he'll take him over. I'll go over for Broussard, too. All
right, 3.5 total touchdowns for Thorne. Total touchdowns. So running as well as throwing. Oh, no faith. No faith. I'm going over. We're blowing this team out, all right? We're putting up 50-plus points on this team.
I know, but if Berger and Broussard are going for 115,
all right, and then 5.5 sacks.
Touchdowns, too.
Yeah, exactly.
75 to 8 again.
That's fine.
108 years ago?
Yep. All right, and then 5.5 sacks for the Michigan State defense. I was thinking about making it, stupid high.
This is going to go over, honestly. But I figured
let's make it
we talked about it in the lead up to the season, man. I really liked the front 7. And you got one guy got 4 last week. I wouldn't be surprised if Windman, again, had another 3 this week. And then you're just looking at anybody else to rack up 3 more from what your number is. So, yeah.
All right, let's put your money where your mouth is. 2.5 sacks for Windman.
All in on Jacoby Windman. He's going to be like Shalik Elwin.
All right, so the only one we're disagreeing. So we're disagreeing only on Peyton Thorne. I think he's getting over 275. You think he's going under. I think he's getting over 3.5 touchdowns. You think he's right at 3. So, all right, and then final score prediction. I got my favorite Super Bowl, which is Joe Montana absolutely decimating the Denver Broncos and John Elway, 55-10.
I was going to say 56-7.
Well, either way, we got them covering the 34.5 point spread, and obviously we will react following the weekend.
Spread, not quite
with you guys on our next show. No. Definitely not quite as big as the next game we were talking about.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls, contests, and other content.